This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome. My name is Alex White. I'm Director General here at the Institute. The Economist magazine at the weekend, I don't make a habit of quoting from it in introductions, but I noticed that there was a piece in it on Germany, concentrating on the Chancellor. We won't be talking about the Chancellor specifically today, but the piece itself was about him. But in the course of it, it said, by way of introduction, that notwithstanding his recent spat with Donald Trump, Mr. Merz has restored a sense of vitality to German foreign and security policy. So I wondered when I read it whether our distinguished guest this afternoon has had a role, and I'm sure he has, a critical role in that particular exercise. Christoph Wolfrum is Director General for European Affairs at Germany's Federal Foreign Office. He's going to speak to us on the topic of how Germany and Ireland will work towards a stronger Europe, particularly during the upcoming Irish presidency. And of course, there is a broader global context for everything that I'm sure he will want to say to us, and that people perhaps will like to ask him about, or indeed make their own comments and observations, because we have a very interested and engaged and expert audience. Can I thank our colleagues at the German Embassy in Dublin for their help in organising this event this afternoon. Christoph, or Mr. Wolfrum, Christoph, I'll call you, will give some opening remarks, and then from the rostrum, and then go to a Q&A with the audience, a chat, a conversation, which is our form here at the Institute. Just a couple of brief notices. We'll come to you for the Q&A after the opening remarks. As I said, you'll be able to join the discussion the normal way if you're watching us on Zoom using the Q&A function, and you can send in your questions once they occur to you, because they'll all be banked there, and I'll be able to get to them once we have that opportunity. And of course, you're in the room, it'll be easier. You just simply have to put up your hand and then we'll come to you. The presentation, the opening remarks, and the Q&A are all on the record this afternoon. And if you are minded to do so, of course, you can keep the conversation going on social media. And if you're doing that, you might please tag the IIEA. Christoph Wolfrum has been Director General for European Affairs at Germany's Federal Foreign Office in Berlin since 2024. He previously led work on EU strategic policy issues, EU coordination, and EU external affairs, and he served as Deputy Head of Mission at the German Embassy in Madrid from 2019 to 2023. His other previous roles include Head of Division for EU Policy and Strategy, Deputy Head of the United Kingdom Task Force, and Deputy Head of Division posts in the EU Coordination Group, that was 2014-15, the EU Justice and Home Affairs, 2012-2014. He also worked as an Antici at Germany's permanent representation to the EU in Brussels from 08 to 12, and in nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament at a different time, and at the German Embassy in Bogotá as head of the legal and consular section. So that's quite a CV, quite a background, and I know we're all looking forward very much to Christoph's opening remarks and to the engagement that we'll then have an opportunity to have. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much, and welcome.
Thank you, Alex, and it's a great pleasure to be here in sunny Dublin. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you all and have a chat on European policy, which is very timely, actually, because the Irish presidency is only a few weeks ahead, and this is also the reason why I'm here in Dublin in general, because I'm having talks with my counterparts here in the MFA and also in other ministries to touch base and have exchanges of view on where we are and how we can help the Irish presidency to move on. But talking about the challenges for the European Union as a whole, I would start by saying that probably we have four elements which are basically shaping the context in which European policy takes place nowadays. And the first being obviously the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine, which is still one of the basic features with which we have to cope as a European Union. The second thing, basic element in my view is the role of China on the world stage. China's aspiration of shaping world order, but also challenging our economic model in the European Union is certainly one of the big elements of context that we have. Third, we have the transatlantic relationship, which is still a cornerstone of our policy, of our security in Europe, but which nowadays has changed, and which brings us a new element of context that we have to face. And fourth, I would mention the growing assertiveness of international partners as a whole. We have countries like India, South Africa, Brazil, many others who nowadays are willing to take their own role in the international arena, and where Europe has to see how we can deal with it, how we can relate to these new international partners, also in light of the other three elements that I have mentioned. Parting from this context, I would see a number of priorities for European policy, and I start by mentioning, obviously, the field of security and defense, which must be one of the priorities for the European Union in the years to come, and certainly also during the Irish presidency. Security and defense, two elements I would mention: security and defense as a whole, where obviously for us NATO is still a cornerstone of our security policy, but at the same time, in our view, we have to strengthen the European pillar within NATO. So also there are 4 EU member states, obviously, who are not inside NATO. And we see that there is still a very important role for these to also contribute to strengthening of European security by, for example, in the field of military mobility or the build-up of European defense industry. We think that during the Irish presidency, the work towards a new European security strategy will be one very, very important element where we have to work on, and where we have to see whether we can find a good result. The second element of security and defense, which I would like to mention, is obviously the question of Ukraine, which will certainly also in the months to come plays a very important role for the European Union. We think that we still have to continue to support Ukraine. We have to, on the other hand, increase also the pressure on Russia to work towards a cessation of the war. And third, we have to keep also the US on board with regard to the efforts to find a solution to that war in the end. The second big priority that I see is obviously the question of competitiveness. And there, this has a direct relationship with my remarks in the first place on the role of China in the world. We have to see that in 2025 in Europe, every day we have lost 1,000 working places in the industry, working places which probably will not come back. And this is due to the lack of competitiveness that we have, and where we have to work on. I think that during the Cyprus presidents, we have made good progress. We have now a roadmap in order to improve competitiveness. We have an ambitious legislative agenda for the deepening of the single market, the One Europe, One Market roadmap, which sets important deadlines, and we will be very supportive to the Irish presidency in order to complete these dossiers also in time. When we talk about competitiveness, there is a number of issues that we find important. First, as I mentioned, the deepening of the single market, but there's also the simplification agenda, where we already have done a lot of efforts with regard to simplification of regulation and to create a better environment for our companies in the market to be competitiveness also on the international scene. Most important dossiers are the so-called 28th regime, which should help our companies, especially the small and medium-sized companies, to be able to really extend their activities, economic activities, in the whole of Europe. We are suffering a huge fragmentation of our regulatory environment, a huge fragmentation of our company. And in that sense, it will be important to create this new regime, which can help these companies to have a single regime for the whole of the European Union. The question of the competitiveness on the inside of the European Union obviously is only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin are questions like trade, like economic security, where we have to give a new impetus and have to find solutions. There's a lot of trade agreements that have been already finalized. We have the Mercosur agreement, which has entered into force already provisionally. But now there are other important trade agreements ahead of us, like the one with Australia and other countries. So we count on this next semester to have good results in the trade agenda. Also, with regard to the EU-US trade relations, now we are in a crucial phase where we still have time to implement the Turnberry agreements on trade relations with the US, and we hope this will be done maybe even before the Irish presidency starts. Third point, now we have security and defense. Second, we have competitiveness, and the third point refers to, I would say, the European Union as such. We have to create a strengthened EU, a EU capable to act in the world, to make its interests heard. And this refers in particular to the areas of enlargement. We believe that enlargement is an important element for fostering and improving Europe's overall stability and security. We think that it is for Europe as a whole important to become larger, to don't leave neighbors who are actually striving for a European future, to leave them out or leaving at leaving them to the influence of other actors in the neighborhood. So we have a number of frontrunners. We have Montenegro, who is striving for becoming the 28th member state, still in 28, which is very ambitious, but we are very much supporting and supportive of that goal and want to help them to reach this. And I think that during the Irish presidency, this is a very important phase where we will see whether they can achieve that. And then finally, when it comes to enlargement, a word on Ukraine. Ukraine obviously has a very clear perspective to be a full member of the European Union. We support this, and we want to bring that forward. Now, after the Hungarian elections, I think there is a good possibility to make a real progress. We hope that the first clusters of the negotiations on enlargement will be opened before the summer, actually, and then I think that we really or Ukraine really can start with the whole reform agenda, and I think this political sign will be very important. The other side of enlargement is the question of reform, because we believe that when the European Union enlarges, it also has to reform itself. it's not a precondition for the enlargement, but it's a necessity for the European Union to be stronger when there are more countries and not be weakened by enlargement. So we think that there are a number of issues that we have to tackle there. There's the question of how we take decisions. Can we allow ourselves in an enlarged European Union to be blocked by just one member state in important issues, especially when they refer to security? Or do we have to move on to a different way of decision making, like decision making with qualified majority voting? I think that in our view it is very clear, but we also know that this requires a lot of discussions and a lot of convincing, because we know that this has to be accepted by everyone. This is not something that anybody can impose on someone else. All the member states have to agree on this and have to really be totally behind it. But there's other areas as well, like the question of how the institutions are set up. Do they have the right size, or should they be more focused and more agile in their acting? We have the question of whether we are well established in our external action. We have a European Action Service, we have the Commission, we have the Council Secretariat, a lot of actors who are all dealing in the foreign policy area. And the question is whether there could be found ways to better coordinate those actors, or better bring them together in order to make ourselves more capable to play a role on the international scene. All these priorities obviously must be financed. So this brings me to my final point, which is the question of the multi-annual financial framework. Sounds like a EU techie issue, but it is not, because in my view, the financial framework has much less to do with finances, but rather more to do with the question whether we set our priorities right. So the first question of the MFF is not the numbers, but the first question is, do we set ourselves the right priorities? And in our view, in the view of the German government, the priorities for the MFF, and in that sense also for the EU policy as such, the priorities must be, as I just said, security and defense and competitiveness, without forgetting traditional policies, but setting the relationship between these policies in the right way. There, I think that the Irish presidency has a huge task. We are absolutely prepared to support the Irish presidency in this task, and we want to help them and to finalize these negotiations, if possible, until the end of the year. This is, I think, quite ambitious, but I think it's at the same time it's doable, and it would be very important to show that the European Union is able to find agreement in such a difficult dossier where so many different interests are involved. So this is, in a nutshell, in my view, the big priorities that we have ahead of us, and I'm very happy to discuss this or go even deeper if you wish so. Thank you very much.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.